but that's also, I mean, the title itself tells you that I have decided that, and this is part of deconstruction, because deconstruction says that whatever interpretation you approach a text with, you can find in the text. This is the whole play of deconstruction. You can think of whatever you want before coming to the text, and then you will find proof from the play of signifiers, signified metaphors, and so on in the text. So it is a play. It is a kind of play, right? So it actually allows, the deconstruction allows for this kind of thing. I decide from the beginning that this is a Zionist, and I go and I give it to you from the text. So this is about, so it does not contradict deconstruction. It might contradict other approaches. You don't come to the text with preconceived ideas. Deconstruction itself does that. أنا بس مسألة شخصية.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that. Let's say yesterday we talked about having a conception, just like you said, explicitly saying tested to be proved and to come up with a conclusion what happened and why this is right, this is wrong. But we have this identity that's put here or even was in the posting that you explained. The idea of having to prove something, to test an idea and prove it right. Tell us, I have an idea and this is right and I want to prove it to you.
Yeah, the point is, as I was just saying, this is specific about deconstruction. This might not look appropriate if you are doing feminist analysis or you are doing post-colonial analysis. You don't want to say from the beginning that I want to prove that shaping was influenced by, although you can, but he says عن الانفلونس. أنا بتكلم على تفسير سيسل دي لويس على T.S. Eliot. فأنا ببدأ بالأسامبشن إن في تفسير من سيسل دي لويس على T.S. Eliot. فإتس okay to have this as an assumption that I want to prove. أنا من الأول شايفة إن في تفسير أو في الcomparative literature لما كانت في المدرسة القديمة بتاعت الcomparative literature بتاعت الانفلونس. كانوا بيبدأوا من influence وممكن يثبتوا في الآخر إن في influence in جبران كان الأصل بلاي. Okay, but there is a فرضية that I start, but it's a فرضية that can be tested. Okay, هو أصله هو he referred to play in this and that context. أنا عارفة إن هو درس بلاي في الفترة دي أو إن هو أشار في القصيدة دي إلى play. So there is evidence, but in other instances I cannot say أصل تشينوا الشيبي كان مؤمن بالعقدية الثقافية because I don't know how can I prove it. I am just getting evidence from the text, but it's not something that I'm set to prove. It's not something that can be proved. With deconstruction, this is the play of deconstruction. Deconstruction starts with وسع كده انا هثبت لكم الموضوع ده ايا كان انا عندي القدره ان انا اثبت اي حاجه في التكست. ف your concern is justified, but with deconstruction, this is part and parcel of deconstruction, coming to prove something. Other comments, other yes.
I want to more elaboration on 2 points: the relationship to formality and clarity. For example, I think this style is a bit informal. The point is, I want to make or to write a clear text, but it doesn't have to be informal.
Could you pinpoint the parts where you find informal so that we can discuss?
For example, the above mentioned aims, I think this is like in the air. What are the aims that I mentioned before? For example, also unlike, etc. I think this is a weak conjunction, etc. In so doing, etc. I think this is contains a sort of informality.
I think they're basically in the transitional cohesive ties. What mentioned that one, you have to remember that these are written as if it were part of the proposal and the aims were already mentioned. So I don't think about mentioning them. You should avoid informality, but I don't think this is just informal.
I don't think either. I don't think unlike or in so doing is informal.
Okay, another point concerning this definition, it lacks citation.
Which definition of deconstruction?
It lacks citation.
Lacks
Regardless of whether we agree or disagree with this citation, but
Yes.
it lacks citation.
Yes.
Also, what if I said unlike analysis and interpretation in a recurrent sense? I have to explain later, right? In the same paragraph, or shall I explain in the coming paragraph?
You explain if you are going to refer to recur.
Yeah, what if I added unlike analysis and interpretation in recurrent sense, the recurrent or
You have to
communicating
explain in the
perspective?
following paragraph
What
what
does it say?
Paul Ricoeur has said about interpretation and deconstruction. Because these are your tools in that sense. This is a good comment because we don't have tools at all, as you pointed out in this. We don't have the tools of feminism that are going to be used. We don't have the tools of deconstruction. So, yes, now when I refer to Paul Ricoeur, or I refer to Rorty, or I refer to Derrida or Goldman or whatever, then I'm getting into details. I'm getting into what you could say tools, yeah. The trace. It's a way of uncovering the hidden meaning of the text through the trace. And I can buy the trace in a following paragraph. Okay? Derrida's theory of the trace will be used. وَاشْرَحْ هُوَ إِن trace. Now I am dissecting my approach and producing tools, operative residue. Derrida's idea of residue. He looks for whatever seems unnecessary in the text, whatever excess, rhetorical excess in the text. And this is a way for him to get the hidden underlying meaning. And how do I get the fact that Mahmoud Darwish is a Zionist? Through the verbal play in the text. One of these verbal plays is the residue, the excess meaning. Why does he seem to put something more than needed? So, and I take this and I try to see it as referring to a hidden meaning. So now I'm getting out the tools and I explain them in many paragraphs. The methodology can be long, can be longer than one paragraph.
Just come on. We have to bear in mind what part of the proposal we were writing. Whereas earlier, in the previous example, in the objective, we could not have detailed the theory that we're using. Here, it is a necessity for detailed the theory that we're doing. So, in A, if you want to refer to a specific psychology or framework or whatever, and you call it a concept, in it, you have to explain precisely who came up with it and how you are going to use it. Okay? And I think here lies the problem with this paragraph as a methodology, because when you look at it, you don't understand how this researcher is going to work with their texts. It tells you classical feminism. What is classical feminism? And canonical deconstruction. Whose deconstruction? Which author? Which works? Which tools? Which concepts? Same applies for feminism. Now, this is, as you write for methodology, a slightly different though relevant comment I want to remind you of. It's very tricky when you write about your methodology, how much you can include and how much you should include. And of course, it has to be detailed. I mean, this is how I'm going to work, and you need to show it, and it's a weakness if you don't. But if I explain that I'm going to use Derrida's concept of the trace, how much do I need to write about the trace? How much do you think I need to write about the trace?
Marxist is going to be basis for structure, but I think I have to get into everything, especially the relevance of my analysis, the relevance of my research.
Exactly. I think you need to bear in mind again that your focus is your proposal, and you write as much about the theory you're using You don't need to go and tell anyone when deconstruction started or where it started or who the main figures are of deconstruction theory. You're actually discouraged from doing that because you're assuming you're writing for a community of scholars who should know certain basic information. Do not talk down to your reader. However, do assume that your reader does not know specifically this concept and explain it. If you're using a term or a concept out of feminist theory, you need to explain it and to explain how you are going to.
وبعدين برضه ما تستسهلوش يعني اصل elective deconstruction is a theory that started and this can be taken from any source. Anybody who has nothing about deconstruction will plagiarize because even if you quote and you take something really from a source, but what is it? You have not read the thing. But when you start extracting tools, then you have read, and you know your tools, and it's, the reader understands what kind of work has been done behind the scenes. So it's, you just don't give me a definition and that's it. You have to show me that you understand. Yes.
Question. Goes back to what Hannah said about being meaningful. This or that this feminist authors.
Which line please?
Third one. That this feminist authors work is in fact far from feminist. Far from feminist. Yes, it sounds to me, maybe it's not, actually to me it sounds important, I'm not sure if this is correct. Maybe it's a strong judgment at a very early stage or something like that. There's something wrong about this.
Needs to be formulated in a different way, in a sense, because this is essentially what he wants to say, but the formulation of the statement maybe it sounds a bit raw, or it needs to be, yeah. But is there anything at all good about this methodology? Can you find anything that?
I think one thing is like extramarital relationships with friends and relationship. It's kind of grounding us in us and how, and one of the two, the how basically. But yeah, that's and because one of my big problems with this approach is that it's written with assumptions. Prove this. Yeah, there's questions we don't know. There's research to know.
Yeah.
So prove.
Yeah, the first point I think I see, I think I can agree with this, that when he starts talking about the social mobility and so on, it's the what and the how at the same time. I'm looking at social mobility, I'm looking at, but he's not telling us how he's looking at these things. يعني طبعا هو قرب شوية من التولز، يعني هو عشان يتكلم في الفراغ زي في الأول. He's been pinning down things. بس برضه I'm lacking more concreteness, But you're right, this is more going towards what we want. The other thing about, proving, as I'm saying, this is part of deconstruction, but maybe the phrasing itself is a bit rough, a bit, something a bit unscientific. But I mean, when you read Harold Bloom, awesome. Sorry?
Eagleton as well.
Eagleton as
That's
well.
what Madonna and ideology. I don't know why.
Eagleton because of Marxism, the person wasn't that great. But I mean, Bloom is I really want to pick up the phone and say some bad words to this guy. Don't talk to me like that, You're a critic. Don't talk to people like that. But this is somehow part of deconstruction, deconstruction, you have to remember, it also different tendencies. It started philosophically, and then it was taken to literary criticism.
Yes.
So it was taken to literary criticism. There were different interpretations. The Yale School did something different from the Europeans. But one of it is that extreme, actually. So I would not blame the person for that because it has his teacher Harold Bloom But of course, we can argue the talent himself. I think you have a point there too. But I mean, if the person was here, he could defend himself with this, because this is a modern state.
I want to check a validity of my understanding to a certain point you have raised. I think what I can say in a nutshell that the proposal writing oscillates between certainty and uncertainty. Certainty in the methodology and uncertainty in writing, in formal writing. Am I right or not?
I don't think I understand you.
I mean, I feel it oscillates between certainty in
The
using
writing, the
a certain
writing
methodology,
itself.
yes, and uncertainty in using language.
Certainty about the methodology. I would say there is certainty about more things than the methodology. It's not just the methodology. If you're talking about this part, because this is about methodology,
I'm talking in general, yeah.
proposal writing in general, I think there's certainty about more than one thing, not just the methodology.
I have a problem with showing that I'm certain about what I'm writing. Why should I say this is an assumption, I'm uncertain, I'm going to examine, I'm going to analyze? Why should I?
What you said yesterday, you were not here, that if you are certain about your assumptions, then you don't write your proposal. Then why do
I
you
should write my thesis.
You should
No,
not
you
write
should not,
anything
you should not work
because
on this topic at all.
yeah, because
If you know everything about it, then you don't have anything to ask.
and you know the results beforehand, except if you are a deconstructionist, that's something else. Because deconstruction starts with the end, starts with the final end. But if you are dealing with whatever, then you are posing the questions because you want to investigate them in your work. So you don't have a definitive answer. Maybe you have a variety of answers to each question, but you cannot really provide an answer to each question until you have finished your work. So you're uncertain about that. In this sense, you are uncertain, but you are certain that you want to use this tool and not that tool. You're certain that you have picked up this word and not that word. You are certain that you want to investigate these questions. You know, there is a lot of certainty in that sense, but the results are not certain. Yes, we have it.
Yes, I wish Dr. Salwa was here today because I'm reading text and I discovered from my reading that Mahmoud Awish is a Zionist. So I'm trying to prove it. It's nothing wrong. I mean, yes, there is logic. I'm not talking about an example specific, but you say I'm having an assumption or a preconceived idea. It didn't came from out of the blue. It came because I read and I found, for example, very tiny evidences that this is that.
Yes,
so
the idea is
convince
whatever
others.
interpretation you
It's
come
not
up
correct,
with
yes.
is not the final thing, it's
Yes.
not the right thing. So I am trying to talk about my assumption here, and I keep my assumption as an assumption until the very end, and this is something we agreed upon in studying literature
Yes,
in general.
yes.
So it's not something that I'm proving, because if I'm
Very
proving,
my point of view.
then I'm arguing for that. Okay, I'm demonstrating that. But proving will give you the impression that if I have proven this, then this is eternal. No one can come and
Maybe
question it
linguistics,
later.
yes.
Maybe, and even in science, you know, things get
More uncertain.
unproven. You know why? So maybe proof is maybe it's the use of words, because whatever interpretation you reach at a certain point is good now, but there are other interpretations that are also good. So we cannot say, you know, this is. I
Right.
discovered that he's a Zionist. No.
Okay, but she's free to assume that she's an anti-feminist
If she's using deconstruction.
or whatever. She
No.
said anti-feminist in the title. She's free to and then tell us why she thinks she is.
Exactly, she's arguing for that. She's arguing for it. But she is not posing it as the alternative to what is offered elsewhere. I am posing it as one of the possible explanations if we are away from deconstruction. Okay? So when you say, I discovered that Mahmoud Awish is a Zionist, Mahmoud Awish is dead. We will never know if he was a Zionist or not. Even if he came and talked to us, he might be lying. So we cannot really say, I discovered he's a Zionist. I discovered evidence in the text that might belie his Zionist feelings. If these are evidence in the text, but him as a Zionist,
Can I also add something? I mean, we have to distinguish between two things. Right? Research is based on exploring, on tenderness, on discovery. A journal article, a newspaper article, much of the newspaper articles that we read is, I've read this poem and this is my interpretation of it, and I just dump it on the reader and I don't have to prove anything. But this is not research. Research is about the process. It's about exploring, finding out, discovering. Do we come to the text with assumptions? Of course we do. We always do. Otherwise, how would we come up with the topic to work with? I'm assuming there is something that is fruitful that I will discover when I explore this text from post-colonial perspective. For example, so some assumptions are there. But remember, you're eventually writing 150-page thesis, 200-page thesis. You cannot know everything about what you're doing. And if you know it, and what you're doing is an exercise in convincing me of your ideas, do not try this. Because write a book about this poem and say, this is what I believe, this is what I've discovered. But an MA or a PhD thesis is based on discovering something you don't know. And honestly, if you think you know everything about your topic, don't work on it. It will first off will bore you to death. Because you know it. Why are you doing this research?
you would be writing an article on it.
An article or a book or whatever you want, but it cannot be a thesis. A thesis, by nature, seeks to find an answer to something it doesn't know.
You mean I'll be surprised by what I find during writing?
Sometimes.
A lot of times. A lot of times, when you actually explore and analyze closely using this methodology, and you read more as you work, you discover things you didn't know. Of course, which surprised the man, I'll start by white and end up with black. And suddenly the book is very itself and I'm just watching. It's not like that. It's not like that. Because this is how actors talk, I impersonate this character and then suddenly I find myself doing this and that and yet. No, research. But sometimes you find yourself going in directions you didn't anticipate. And sometimes you find yourself reading something that changes your perception of what you were doing. And sometimes you discover something you didn't know existed after. That's the whole point of our research.
I'll give you an example of my thesis very briefly, because when I started doing my PhD, I wanted to compare macroderivation density groups. And I had read macroderivation density groups, so I was fascinated by the similarities between them. And I was very happy that nobody had done that before. And these people, these two guys are so similar in everything, even their personal lives. And then the stages I could envision for the development were compatible, surprisingly compatible. And I started learning, and I went through 4 stages. One was the early commitment phase, and then one was the prison, and then one was the early exile phase, and finally the post reconciliation. I thought I would go and would find them compatible. They were compatible up to a great extent, but then when I came to the final stage, which is the reconciliation stage, the whole land is lost, and we could never get it back, so I'm going to reconcile myself with reality. And I found it completely different, not completely, but widely different, not as similar as I had thought in the beginning. So, I explored that difference, and my last chapter was actually to see how divergent they have become in the last stage, although I started with the assumption that they would be compatible to the end.
Yes, and what are the proposals that you have submitted? Which it can be?
Yeah. I mean, nobody looks at your proposal and you just said at the beginning before you came, it doesn't mean that it's a toy, but if your serious research has led you somewhere different from some of what you have said in the proposal, then it's fine.
Everybody, I mean, apart from people checking on you and comparing your proposal, this is not said. Everybody understands the proposal as that. You know, you're proposing an idea that may change.
I have heard that the topic cannot be changed. It's measurable.
Cannot be changed, but for that,
But
yes.
it can be if you have to go through some difficult processes. Yeah, that's different. Yeah.
But you can. But that's the process. You have to revisit what you wrote and change them. Otherwise, you'll be stuck on what you wrote and then not looking what's happening.